Okay, it's me, Paul Theron, back again with the Blunders, a fresh, hot take on the National Health Initiative. Where did this thing came from? Dropped on us about 10 days ago by the Health Minister, like a dog dropping a huge stinking turd in your kitchen. You walk into the room one morning and, oh my God, what is that stench? Now, of course, the whole thing is completely and utterly unworkable. It's an absolute shocker. It's been drafted by people who've got such an overwhelming belief in the idea of state intervention that they cannot conceive, even for a moment, of the idea that it will be totally and utterly impossible to implement. But you know what? That's not my main complaint. No, my main complaint is that people who should know better are saying, well, perhaps we should accommodate this NHI monster and see how it goes in practice. You know, maybe it won't be so bad after all. Bullshit! This thing needs to be resisted in its entirety because it is an attack on personal freedom and individual liberty in our country. Another thing that these apologist fools are saying is, no, don't worry, it's bad policy, but it'll never be implemented. Let's not worry, they'll fail. Well, I think that's fucking irresponsible. So let me repeat myself. This thing needs to be resisted at its roots because it is an attack on personal freedom and individual liberty in this country. Let's review the detailed subsections of the problem we have. First of all, the National Health Initiative is a shocking attack on savers in the private medical aid schemes. Remember how the schemes work for a minute. About 4 million people in this country and their dependents, so that's close to about 8.5 million South Africans in total, take their own money by their free choice and pay it over every single month to ensure that their families have adequate savings for a high level of medical care if they get sick, or if they get in a car accident, or if they get fucking cancer when they're old. That's right, they take their after-tax money. So they've already expressed their social solidarity by paying taxes. And as we all know, the people in this country who are well enough off to have private medical aid are precisely the ones that contribute the biggest part of the personal income taxes. Those medical aid contributions are a huge number. It's close to 180 billion rands a year. Their money, remember. And remember, the medical aids also have reserves of about 60 billion rand. That also belongs to the members. And this NHI seeks to have those reserves slurped up by the government escape agency and use whatever they're going to do with it. I don't know, give it to Eskom to plug the hole there. No. Next, the NHI is a shocking attack on the individual liberty of medical specialists, practitioners, and all of the other operatives in the system, many of whom have qualified themselves for many, many years of tough academic struggle at great cost to themselves. These highly valued and, yes, well-paid members of society are now being told that they will henceforth work for the state. Anyone with an ID can walk into their medical rooms and get treated. And then the specialist, has to send the bill to the government and hope that they'll get paid at the end of the day. And what is more, every single service will be price capped. So every single practitioner, whether they are highly skilled or not, whether they trained for 20 years to become the best specialist in the world, will be told, no, you can only charge that for that particular service, which is the same as everyone else. I mean, fuck off. That is absolutely absurd and ridiculous. Now remember, the NHI is also a shocking attack on medical aid administrators, the companies that do the administration, principally those like Discovery and MedScheme. These are listed companies that have been building up their businesses for the last 30 years. Discovery manages claims of about 56 billion rands a year, using systems carefully designed to avoid fraud, make sure they don't make any errors, make sure everybody gets paid out to the right account. And for that, the company earns fees of about 5.6 billion rands a year. That's 10% of the flows. This is a business that is highly valuable in our society. And the share price of Discovery, I must tell you, has collapsed in the last 10 days because that revenue may be at risk. This gargantuan NHI fund, they say they're going to administer themselves. And that lucrative business might fly out of the window. The NHI is also a shocking attack on private hospitals. What are our private hospitals? These are businesses that have been built up through decades and decades of careful capital investment. Investment in theatres, investment in equipment, investment in buildings. Now they're going to be told by the Minister of Health whether they're allowed to stay open and what they're allowed to charge in their operating theatres. What a fucking disgrace. It's absurd and ridiculous. And finally, this NHI is a shocking attack on pharma companies, the makers of medical equipment, drugs, and the medical devices that go into human bodies. Again, huge businesses, some of them local, some of them international. Who is the Minister of Health to decide what the latest drugs should cost, or what the latest hip replacement developed in the USA should be costing an individual? What does he know? He or she is an elected politician. And please, don't test my patience by telling me that he will appoint a committee of experts to make these decisions, because we know what kind of people get appointed to committees like those in this country. Idiots who are venal and lazy and prone to corruption, that's who. Like I said at the top of the clip, that's why this thing needs to be resisted in its entirety. It's an attack on personal freedom and individual liberty. Why should you not be able to save for your own private or medical care? I mean, if you're going to go down this road, why not ban private schooling or private security? Yes, they can't spend their money on that either. So rich people, no private security, please. Please pay over more money in taxes. And you know what? The government will use it to buy better desks at police stations in your area, and you can just go to hell. No, I don't think so. Let's review another specific and thorny issue here. World-class healthcare costs a lot. The best drugs, the top specialists, the highest-end facilities. Where did the idea come from that every single citizen in the whole world has a basic human right to enjoy such care? It's nonsense. It's just not true. Everybody would love to live in a big house with a great big garden, but they can't. Those people have to go to the park. Everybody would love to drive a fancy car, but they can't. There isn't enough money to go around. People like that have to take the bus. What are we now? Are we Soviet Russia, where someone's going to decide what kind of level of living that people are allowed to enjoy with their own personal savings? Broadly speaking, tax monies, remember, are collected by the general fiscus, and a big chunk of what is collected by the South African state goes to healthcare already. 226 billion rands in the last year, nearly 13% of the total government budget. That goes to the state, that goes to the public healthcare facilities, which we know are in a dire state of crisis. But what is that a problem of the society at large? That is a problem of the state and its ability to implement solutions which are appropriate for its people. I'm told that more money won't make it any better. Why? Because it's bad management, corruption, and demotivated staff that make it bad. Let me move on to another prediction. If they crank up the taxes, if they take those medical aid subscriptions in this country, the total tax take collected by the South African state will be less. What do you mean? What I'm telling you is that if the government decides that they're going to grab the medical aid contributions and crank up payroll taxes, the total amount of money collected in taxes in this country will go down. Why? Because it's going to be devastating for the overall state of tax compliance. We've already seen that with recent increases in the marginal tax rates in this country. One more thing I need to air. In the tiny minds of our leaders, the private medical aid sector are a disaster. The whole private sector is a disaster, and it's crying out for more regulation by the minister. That is nonsense. The private medical aid industry in this country is world class. Are you listening? It is world class. Is every single customer or happy all of the time? Of course not. I mean, you got cancer and your medical aid won't pay for some fancy new immunotherapy drug which they invented in America last year, and it costs $1 million a week. Well, boo fucking who? That's how it works in the real world. They're not going to pay. So you want to see the best dermatologist in town, and she charges 5 times the medical aid rate. So you have to kick on the difference. It's called a copay. Well, boo fucking who? That's how it works. I see a lot of politicians complaining that gynecologists in this country do too many C-sections, cesarean sections. Well, let me explain to you how that works. People sue if their children are born with defects by natural births. They take them out by C-section because then they're fine. So you know what? Just shut up about that. The private medical aid in this country is world class because it's a finely balanced power struggle between the very powerful medical aids and the very powerful hospitals and pharmaceutical companies and the specialists who work in the sector. Leave it alone. It is world class. It cannot be improved by additional government fiddling and interference. You know, I can see what President Cyril Ramaphosa is doing here. He knows that he has very high levels of personal popularity right now. So he's just bombing on and implementing all of the resolutions from the last, I don't know, is it 2, 3, 4 ANC policy conferences, however ridiculous they are. Land expropriation, healthcare re-regulation, nationalization of the Reserve Bank, bailouts for the state-owned enterprises. Well, you know what? He has to keep in mind that he is not just the president of the Socialist Utopian Party. He is also the president of the whole of South Africa. He has to respect the taxpayers of this country. Seriously, guys, seriously, do you really think that people are going to give up their discovery vitality for your basic state scheme? These are people who jump out of bed early in the mornings in order to go to gym so that they can earn points, so they can get diamond vitality status to qualify for cheaper flights on Kalula. You want them to hand over their Mercedes-Benz in exchange for your one-size-fits-all donkey cart NHI system. Give me a fucking break. Okay, so where are the medical aids in all of this? I'm reading in the newspaper today that somebody called Sipho Kabane, who is the chief executive and registrar of the Council for Medical Schemes, is blathering on in public saying things like, well, perhaps we need to start looking at how we position ourselves as schemes, administrators and members. I'm sure it's going to be fine. It's not going to be fucking fine. Johnny Broomberg, who is head of Discovery's medical aid, where is he? The fucking pirates have boarded the ship. They're going to destroy what you have built. It's time to wake up and smell the coffee. So let me repeat myself one last time. This thing needs to be resisted in its entirety because it is an attack on personal freedom and individual liberty in this country. It's time to lawyer up. This is going to be an epic fight.